All right, we are live. It is Thursday, 3 o'clock Eastern. And usually at this time on a Thursday, I would be saying, my name is Brent Leary, or I'm Brent Leary, or something like that. And then that would be usually followed by, and I'm Paul Greenberg. And then I would say something about we are the CRM Playaz and bring the as and all that stuff. But Paul is away for the next two Thursdays. So there has never been a CRM Playaz with either one of us missing. So this is absolutely not a CRM Playaz show. So there cannot be a moment of Sven because that's only on the CRM Playaz. So Sven, I appreciate you being here, but Paul's not here to take the guest, so we can't do that. Oh, you're gonna tell us at least what you're saying here. Oh no, that's just the same thing. So I'm not even gonna hazard a guess because that's a Playaz thing. We can't do that. We can't do Stump the Godfather because there. Sometimes people say I'm saying stomp. I'm saying stump the Godfather. I would never want to say stomp the Godfather. That's like sacrilegious. I can't do that. But there will be no stump the Godfather because there's no Godfather to stump. So what does that leave us with? Actually, it leaves us with quite a bit. Because I don't know, I think it was about this time last year, because I know it was another time when Paul was gone, that I said, well, we can't just let a Thursday go to waste. Let's bring on some really good people, some smart people, some people that are not afraid to share their opinions on stuff, people that are not afraid to disagree. And they can do it without being disagreeable. And it was a great show. So I thought, why not do it again? I'm assembling the crew, although I'm still looking for one of the crew. Hopefully he'll come. But let me just introduce who we have here currently. I'm going to do ladies first. Sheryl Kingstone. Hey, Sheryl.
Hello. How is everyone doing today?
You look really pleasant right now. You look, happy. But I know yesterday you were feeling a little different about things. So I was thinking she's going to come in. She's no air conditioning. She's going to be ready to talk about whatever we talk about. So thanks for coming.
Not a problem. All set. Glad to be here.
Also here, you pretty much see him every day because he's usually doing the show, either it's home or somebody else's, but he's never someone short of opinions. He is the Bro Hammer, John Reed, co-founder of Diginomica.
Hey, what's up? I'm coming in hot. I don't even know what we're talking about yet.
You always come in hot, man. Does it matter what we're talking about?
I guess it doesn't, man.
Of course, not hot because I don't have AC. Just hot.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Got to make.
But hey, this should be fun, right?
Absolutely. Well, Speaking of coming in hot, I don't ever recall a time where this person ever came in cold or lukewarm or anything like that. We call him the irascible one, but he's also known as Esteban Kolsky. Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
Whoa, that was bad timing.
I was making sure it works.
It works, buddy. It works. Mr. Kolsky, thanks for joining us, man.
You know what? It's funny that you say hot because it's the coldest summer so far in the last 15 years that I've been here. And by cold, I mean mid-80s, not mid-hundreds. So.
Well, okay. Well, I was getting ready to say I'm glad somebody's feeling a little cold because on the East Coast here, that's not the case.
I know. We sent it over to you guys.
Now, this would also be the time where I'd be introducing our fourth member, anybody who knows anything about this industry knows who that is, Mr. Bob Stutz. We'll leave the light on for him.
He's
over out in the mountains of Germany or something, yodeling. Could you imagine seeing Bob Stutz yodel on top of a mountain?
No.
That would be a thing.
Well, at the end of the day, it might work. But
yeah.
I get the yodeling. What about just being at the top of the mountain?
Yeah, I think he took at the end of the day a little too literally this time, didn't he?
Well, like I said, we'll leave the light on for him, and if he joins us, we'll bring him in right away. And thanks for everybody that's already joining us. And we're just going to have a conversation. I have a couple of things to start with, and then we'll just see where things go. Because usually when you get this crew together, they go somewhere. Don't know where, but they go somewhere. All right. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting. Maybe we start at a higher level, not just dig right into the details of what's going on in the industry. Because, and I even have a visual here, I think we have our president is really starting to dig into AI.
Oh,
all right, we already know how.
Really, you're going political? Oh, don't get me started.
No, I'm just
please.
not doing that. But we are getting to a point where I think it's in the next week. Our current president is going to outline AI priorities in speech, asserting U.S. edge. And digging a little bit more, President Donald Trump plans to deliver a major address on artificial intelligence to outline his vision for ensuring American dominance in AI.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave it at that and open it up to each of you to share your thoughts on what you think in terms of the president speaking about AI, and also kind of the direction you think this might set, because there's also Stargate, which is the $500 billion, I don't know what you call that.
Yeah, that one is going well.
There's that. And generally speaking, he just opened up and letting NVIDIA sell chips to China. So there's a lot of AI stuff going on at the very highest level. So before we dig in and talk about it from our kind of purview, what do you think? Is this A, important, B, important, but is this the right person to talk about this? Or
Yes.
C, off the board? So whoever wants to go in.
I'll let you start. I mean, I had this conversation already a few months ago at an event, so I'll let you get going, and then I'll add my 2 cents, or I can start whichever you want. I just don't want to take over right now.
Go ahead, Sheryl.
Okay, I really wanted to hear what Esteban has to say, but I'm sure he will not be shy to give us what he's been speaking about. I am not a political specialist, though I have been ultimately focused on following what, and I'm going to try to be careful of my words because I really don't want to tip my hand of my own personal opinions here. But the question that Brent raised is he the right person? Right? And my biggest concern here is if he brings in qualified people to really have a discussion, right? So what is the depth of what they're going to bring to the table? I mean, look at the whole Marco Rubio fiasco of the deep fake that was going on there. Do they really have the right people that understand what they're doing? Or is he just going to take the whatever the U.S. big giants have to say? And it's a really meaty topic. Is it one that he's going to cover from the point of view of corporate America? Is it one that he's going to be coming from the point of view of society? Is it one that he's going to cover from the point of view of your employees? I mean, there's so many different ways. And my gut is telling me it's going to be maybe a mile wide with very little meat behind it that anyone can really make decisions over. And it's not going to be completely thought through. And I'm only making that because of everything else he has done to date. I could be completely wrong. I am not a political activist here, but he is not an AI expert, and he doesn't necessarily show that he has people behind him that are guiding him correctly. That's just my personal opinion.
Well put. So a few things here. I think one thing I'm very uncomfortable with in general, and I realize people aren't going to like a lot of what I have to say about this, so I'm sorry about that. But one thing I'm really uncomfortable with in the fate of the world right now is that a lot of power rests in the hands of a handful of individuals who I think deserve to really be questioned in terms of whether they are the wisest, most thoughtful individuals on this planet at this time.
That's what I was trying to say, but I was being nice.
Just to give you an example, some of this U.S.-China thing has already been the scales have been altered a bit just because Mark Zuckerberg decided on his own to open source the llama models, which China has already appropriated and used. Should Mark Zuckerberg, who last time I checked was building a social app for frat boys, be the one to make this decision for the rest of us? Like I'm troubled by these things, okay? Just to answer the question, is Donald Trump getting good advice on this topic? No. Okay, so that's sorted. Now, the other thing I would say is that that I do think that him talking about it is not a bad thing, because in the last election it was kind of a subtopic, and a lot of average Americans aren't aware of how important this issue actually is. And so I think it is important to talk about it. So I will say that the one thing that is really, really concerning to me is that as a result of the so-called arms race, it's essentially riding the handful of big AI companies that were, again, very small number of men are making big decisions for everyone, and who run their companies more like religions than science experiments, are basically dictating our futures, and they're going to have a blank check now to behave however they want. And we've already seen that. For example, Sam Altman very much emboldened at OpenAI right now to borrow whatever copyrighted material they've scraped legally or illegally, use it. There's no apology anymore. It's all about full speed ahead. We've been emboldened by this, and so I think that's a really problematic situation. But I don't really mind this notion in general that the U.S. would want to be exceptional with AI. I don't mind that as a goal. I'm just very, very disturbed by the lack of accountability in this whole conversation. Esteban, over to you.
Esteban's dying to say something. I gotta hear it.
No, I mean, I could go back and forth in a couple of things you mentioned. I mean, you mentioned advisors, and one of his former top advisors decided that his model wasn't Nazi enough, so he actually emboldened it to be more Nazi. That's the type of advisor you're going to be getting, right? But that talks to the crux of this problem, which is, why would any government be involved in determining how AI is used or how it's used, especially in a capitalistic society like ours? In our society, the markets decide what happens. That's the bottom line. The government shouldn't be putting the finger on the scale either way. They should go on its own merits. Let's be reasonable. Ethical AI is a misnomer. It'll never happen, right? So it's not like, the government getting involved is going to make it more ethical or more better, regulator or whatever. The thing is, like, he's just trying to get in to put a word in a place that it doesn't belong. This is a market matters, like it's been for everything else. I don't remember the U.S. presidents over the last 20 years stepping in and saying, "Oh, this is what we're going to do for social."
So we regulate air traffic safety and car safety, but AI, which is arguably as dangerous as all of that, we'll just leave that alone. Let people do whatever the hell they want.
Regulate it, but I mean, regulation and manipulation are two different things.
Okay, all right. Fair enough.
I agree with John.
Right.
We need some laws on the books to protect the children.
Now, the one thing I would say,
let's not be naive about the effect that those laws will have.
Yeah.
There's a loophole, right?
Listen, I don't want regulation until I'm convinced that there's a bunch of smart people who understand the problem in the room, and that's a really, really serious issue with AI. The other thing I really want to point out, and Esteban, you may want to riff on this too, and sorry to interrupt you on this, but I also want to point out that I actually don't believe that the type of AI that these companies are pursuing, which is very LLM centric, which is actually a product of 20 years of deep learning that has always had problems, is actually going to lead us to the future. And in fact, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when companies not affiliated with these big AI companies are the ones that make the true advancements. And we saw that even in the context of DeepSeek in China, which actually developed some pretty innovative approaches precisely because they didn't have access to the technology that these companies claim they need unfettered access to. And so I don't really think that these companies are going to, like, by freeing these big companies up to do whatever they want, I don't think they're going to necessarily be the ones that truly get progress on AI anyway.
You hit the nail on the head. This is not AI. We're living in a world of advanced analytics and machine learning, and advanced analytics and machine learning has nothing to do with AI. So, regulating AI by calling LLMs and Gen AI is a misnomer. So we're going to be like putting rules that are like, obsolete and dated and deprecated the moment that they exist, because they don't really address the true issues. The true issues behind the AI are the next few generations, not what we're living through today. What we're living through today doesn't really matter, man. This is just a parlor trick at best on a good day.
Hey, come on, man! They used it to create tariff policy. That's something.
Hey, Sheryl, please get in
there. Sorry, Sheryl. Go ahead.
That turned out so well. That's what I'm trying to say. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, Reed, is the fact that it's all show. It's all dog and pony show, right? Because he doesn't have the depth. He doesn't know what he's doing. I don't agree that we can't have any rules and regulations applying it. I don't think the government should play a regulatory thing, especially the executive branch. But I do think we need to have some judicial oversight into the outcomes of things that happen. For example, the deepfakes, some rules of engagement, similar to the way that we should have rules in engagement as it relates to search and seizure, right?
But we have laws that contend with the outcome of specific instances and slander and things like that. But the problem is like what are you proposing? What you are proposing is not a executive privilege. It's a legislative
that's what I was saying.
privilege.
It's judicial, not executive.
The biggest problem is we don't have a legislative branch in the U.S. anymore. So that's where it's going to get stuck. Not in the president making a speech that somebody wrote for him to try to pretend to sound smart.
I don't understand why you're so down. Why are you so down on the monarchy, man? One thing
I love dictatorship.
One thing I just wanted to point out is that I think is important in this context is that the so-called big bill that was just passed had a pretty controversial component that affects AI regulation, and in fact, it was quite surprising how that was sort of denounced and removed from the bill. And at the moment, what we have is a potential for 50 U.S. states to make their own AI regulations. So at the moment, on a state level, states are now able to make these regulations. Now, will that hold? I'm not so sure because the big AI companies are really unhappy with that. But I did want to point out that that's the current situation.
Hey, let me jump in there.
Are we going to have this conversation?
No,
Sorry.
jump in just because I want to shout out. Got Bob, we got Alan Burks and Bob Fagel, and a few others. For whatever reason, Bob, you wrote something that is really interesting, but it's not showing up in StreamYard, so I can't put it on the screen.
Bob.
Bob Fagel. Yeah, this is Bob Fagel. We're still leaving the light on for Bob Stutz, so I'll keep it on.
Hi, Bob Fagel. Hi, Alan.
So Bob Fagel says, and this is, I might not be able to read the whole thing, but the founders of the United States envision a nation built on principles of individual liberty, self-governance, and limited government. They aim to create a republic where power was distributed amongst different branches of government, preventing tyranny and protecting citizens' rights. This vision included securing fundamental individual rights such as freedom of speech, religion, and due process.
Right.
As well as the right of the people to govern themselves through their consent.
Exactly of what's happening right now. Totally.
Right. Because right now,
Yeah.
275 years ago, the world are the same place, right?
Yeah. I love the ideas. I'll tell you that. I mean, the ideas are awesome.
That's why.
275 years ago, AI was better regulated than it is today. So.
Yeah.
It was better thought out too, but that's besides the point. Now,
the founders created a framework, and a framework is meant to be, evolved and dynamically adjusted to the times, and we haven't done that. So bringing an argument from 275, 300 years ago to today is absolutely illogical and irrelevant.
Well, some people actually want to live verbatim, word for word, by what was written 275 years when it fits their purpose.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they don't.
That's a pretty big caveat there. When it fits their purpose.
Yeah, that is a huge caveat. Well,
yeah.
Taking just a little slight turn before moving on, I think it was Sam Altman who put out on July the 4th, kind of like I equated to Frederick Douglass. What is the slave to July 4th? What is July 4th to the billionaire? That's what I consider what Sam put out on Twitter. And
this is juicy very quickly.
Yeah. He talks about the importance of techno-capitalism, which is basically saying whoever creates
millions.
Yeah, whoever creates the tech gets to call the shots. Yeah. And he said he would love for the wealth of capitalism, techno-capitalism, be distributed amongst everybody and have everybody have a chance to be a billionaire instead of what the guy in New York that won the primary, Zohan, apparently he said something about billionaires should be eliminated or there should not be any billionaires. So Sam took that to say, well, why shouldn't everybody be a billionaire? And they're both wrong. I mean, but one guy,
you think
that one guy has right now, him and his small group of buddies, like you were talking about, Esteban, literally has a shot to shape all this stuff, this important stuff, because they've got the money and the relationships for the influence on somebody like the president, where the regular folk will never have that, and they will always be 99% behind the 1%. So all that said, is techno-capitalism the way that we should be viewing AI through a lens of that? And is that going to get us to where we want to go? Do we even know where we want to go with this?
Can we bound this like you would do a proper, prompt exercise? Put some boundaries and guardrails. When you say AI, what do you really mean by AI? You mean the current incantation of Gen AI LLMs, or a true AI that actually becomes smarter as it goes and that it's not going to be available for the next 20, 25, 30 years? And this brings the second question, which is, when Sam Altman and his friends talk about AI, they actually talk about the existence of an AGI or ASI component that is not even well defined. So what are we really talking about when we say AI is probably a better, and I hate to be semantically inclined, but it's part of the conversation. Techno-capitalism is actually in charge of the current incantation of what we call AI, which is Gen AI and advanced analytics, but they have nothing proved. They haven't proven anything so far for anything beyond that. So then,
and I don't even like the term techno-capitalist. I mean, we're all just capitalists at heart, and I'm like, and yes, technology is important. But talk about ground rules. Well, what the hell is he talking about? Let's just spew a bunch of.
He's basically talking about he wants the people who are creating the technology get the power, get the money. And they want to keep the power, get the money, and distribute a little trinkets to the rest of us. But it doesn't sound good to say, well, I want to be able to let everybody have the chance to be a billionaire. And we know that doesn't work. That'll never work. It hasn't worked in 225 years.
Story. Okay, so that's a different story. That's not a capitalistic movement to everybody to be equal. Just because we're billionaires doesn't mean that it's not a Marxist approach to society where everybody is the same. So that doesn't really work.
It sounds pretty, but it never worked.
I'm not totally clear on why we're discussing Sam Altman's nonsensical comments on July 4th. Because I don't really think. I mean, I understand that he's influential in a way that I would argue.
Isn't he a part of the Stargate trio?
But
CEOs?
So look. I mean, are we on the wrong track with his version of AI? In an economic context, I would say yes, absolutely we are. I mean, I think the thing I would say is, where are the quality of life improvements? Where is improvement in healthcare? Where is improvement in the political polarization? Where is improvement in wealth disparity? Where is improvement on any serious social issue? Now, you will see some of these religious AI nuts tell you that it's about that AI is going to fix climate change. I think that really test the scope of rationality to imagine that when this is one of the most expensive technologies ever invented. And in fact, I would argue that's one of the downsides.
With high energy consumption.
Right. So, and that's one of, I think, the reasons why I think we're on the wrong track with this form of AI is that it needs way too much data in order to actually do something halfway useful. And when we truly invent intelligent systems, they're not going to be as expensive to run as these. That's all.
Okay, let's time out and just bring it down a little bit to reality for a sec. I do personally feel like the advancements we've had over the past few years using some of these large language models, even from my own uses for work, what I've seen in some demos about what businesses have been able to empower into their own systems, has been very beneficial. Right?
But hang on a sec. But not at the expense of the destruction of the open web and all of the copyrighted material that was stolen from all kinds of people. I don't think it outweighs. Now, if we want to go into an enterprise context, I would say that there's some really interesting industrial AI use cases. Yeah. I don't think those general productivity use cases are really very transformational, but I do think I was about to say that there's a really good news conversation to be had about some of the cool things companies are doing with this technology. But if you want to argue that it's really benefited society in some broader way, which is what Sam Altman's trying to do. Yeah. Sam Altman wasn't trying to say on July 4th that he's helped companies be more productive. And by the way, if you do a search, has AI increased GDP? I just did one. It says, yes, it's generally protected to increase global GDP. That's AI answering the question. So basically it's projected. And Satya Nadella himself said that was the way we should judge AI in the productivity terms you're describing, is when it moves the needle on GDP, which so far it has not. So
whenever I go on a date, people ask me if I'm good at dating. I said I'm the best there ever been at dating, but that doesn't mean that it's good, man. I promise you.
Okay.
But
Like, you
Sheryl,
never ask somebody how good they are at what
But
they
John,
do.
you know
It's
what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
You know?
There has been progress in an enterprise context, but that's a whole different thing than what Sam was talking about.
Right.
it
I'm
is.
trying to
And,
keep the discussion
the
away
thing
from
is,
Sam and into reality.
but
Well,
whenever,
yeah, but that's Brent's fault. He made us talk about Sam Altman.
but
So
whenever you, so, but here's the deal. I was told this early in my career. Whenever you analyze a statement, you got to put it in context, right? And Sam Altman promoting OpenAI and the ability to go and get as much as possible for his blah blah blah. It all comes down to his benefit. He doesn't want to lose his billions. He wants to keep them. The only way he's going to keep him in this model is to continue to promote OpenAI. And to be fair, the party is coming to an end within the next 6 to 12 months. This free subsidized AI will go somewhere else. There's no way to spend billions and billions of dollars for no marked improvement to GDP, no marked improvement to organizations, no marked improvement to overall well-being, to overall society, or whatever. So he's
Well, I hope
struggling
it
to
doesn't
hold
implode,
on,
Esteban, because
hold
some
on,
of the
hold on,
advancements
hold
we've
on,
seen
hold
in
on, hold on.
enterprise. Yeah.
You're answering an unfinished statement. The statement is like, you know, so everything that we've seen through LLM, it's actually not worth the price. We see advances in AI in healthcare, but they're not related to LLMs. LLMs are not the ones who are actually solving the folding of proteins and creating better technology and better solutions for healthcare. We've seen advancements in society, but they're not related to LLMs. If you put an LLM to become a therapist, you're going to get the shit that you actually everybody put in there. People killing themselves after spending time with an LLM as a therapist versus doing, better position solutions. I see many good solutions that are not related to LLMs at all. I see nothing from OpenAI and the current, AI literati or whatever you want to call them that actually talks to, they know what the hell they're talking about or what they're doing with AI.
So this might be a good segue to, not to take Brent's job away from him, but this might be a good segue to the enterprise part of this conversation because
You're taking it right where I wanted to go.
Because Esteban, one of the interesting things about this I don't have full data on this at this moment in time, but I was hearing that one of the changes Google made is to invest so much to keep up in this arms race that we already discredited around Gemini. They actually pulled a bunch of investment, or at least some, away from the AlphaFold healthcare side of things, which I would agree with you is where just won a friggin' Nobel Prize. It's pretty important, interesting stuff. But what that does do is it creates an opportunity for smart, thoughtful enterprise players to attack AI.
Absolutely.
And I think, and I get excited about this conversation, in case people think I'm just a naysayer, I get excited about tackling industry problems. Not, this can send an email for me and this can transcribe this meeting for me or whatever. I get excited about solving real industry problems, and I saw some of that on the event circuit this spring, and it was actually really cool. And because these big AI companies are shooting for the moon, it creates a real opportunity for other vendors to step in and solve more focused problems in more effective ways. And will that involve generative AI technology? Sometimes maybe, sometimes not. But it's more about solving an industry problem and using all the tech at your disposal to do it. And there's some great stories there.
The good news is by bringing the spotlight into AI, whatever form you're talking about, it increases the availability of funds and investment into true projects. I had a friend that was working with LLMs, from the early beginnings, 2017, 2018, 2019. He created a couple companies doing that, and then he just moved to work for a mental health AI company that uses nothing related to AI, to LLMs and Gen AI. And he said the difference is striking in the value that he can accomplish through this. I mean, LLMs are something that, you don't want to invest $10,000 in hiring a research assistant for 10 hours a week. Fine, don't do it. You can use LLMs for that. I do that, all the time. I create my own engines and everything. But you want to fold proteins better. An LLM doesn't even understand what the word protein means, for the love of God. I mean, it's just not going to go anywhere. So you need to actually focus. I mean, if you go back to the early where we started with this, we're talking about AI. Absolutely, I support 100% regulation of AI. Gen AI, leave it. Nobody cares. Seriously, it's another social.
Okay, but we can't. Sorry, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, Esteban. I think you guys are separating out and looking at it in a silo, right? You've got the maturation of the machine learning algorithm, more work processes, right? Then you got the advancements that we did have with LLMs, right? The ability to then pull around generative output from it. summaries. If I look at it in my traditional CRM sense, and I don't really want to boil the ocean here, there's a lot of great advancements for shit that I've been complaining about for 3 decades that we are now using a combination of better improved workflows with the ability to provide more generative assistance, right? Where it's going to help you write stuff, where it's going to summarize, where it's going to bring stuff together, putting it more as a UI over what we're trying to accomplish, put it in context for sales, put it in context for service. Both of those, I hate marketing. So put sales and service, let's focus there, right? And those have great, I mean, I'm sorry, I do love marketing. I was being facetious, but you can do it for marketing too with content and where you're trying to go. There's a lot of stuff that's just moving the needle a little bit more than what we had been trying to do for the last 3 decades, because we're able to bring it all together, because we're able to improve the process map, because we're able to improve reasoning engines, because we're able to use generative as an output, along with the ability to have some LLMs that might be small, not the bullshit large ones that Esteban hates because it brings in all world hunger, and then guardrails around that with your enterprise data, and use those, bring it all in with expertise. That's what's most important. You can't look at it in a silo.
Well, I don't know what you mean by silo. I've no idea. What are you talking about?
Machine learning. It's not AI agentic.
Well, I didn't say that at all. So
no, Esteban did.
Okay. All
right. You and I are always
because you said you guys or whatever. I view
okay, sorry,
I view generative AI as one of the tools that you would use when you're addressing these things. But the one thing I would say is that while you're not wrong about those incremental productivity improvements, that's just not what really gets me excited. I'm not saying that those shouldn't be done.
Well, I love the incremental improvements.
But the problem with that is that the costs of those technologies haven't really leveled off, so it's unclear what the true gain is versus what the cost of those technologies are. You do realize that generative technologies are about 20 times more expensive than machine learning technology. So that's an issue that hasn't stabilized. But let me just give you one example. So let me just give you one example in CX. The coolest thing I saw in CX this year was a demonstration of how a customer really changed their entire model in terms of customer churn, but it was much more of a machine learning dynamic than a generative dynamic, though there was a little bit of a generative component, because as the churn issues were identified, then some of the outreach to those customers happened through generative, but the real action was in how machine learning technology were able to identify different kinds of customers at different points in their process. And so that's all I'm saying, is that really moves the needle, because then you're like changing your churn rate by 10 or 20% or something. To me, that's a much bigger deal than like, oh, this wrote my prospect an email for me. That's all I'm saying.
I totally agree. Exactly. John,
I just think it's fascinating how you berate me for being silo thinking, and then you go to CRM and CX, which are both 30-plus-year-old technologies that got.
That's my point, though.
Hold on.
That's my point.
They got at best. No, they got at best a small boost, if not much more than that, from doing some machine learning that they've been doing for the last 10 years with a new label. Nothing is improved, nothing's changed.
Oh, that is not true. Esteban, that's not true. It really changed. The whole UI can change. The way we're integrating data is changing. The way that we're able to summarize is different.
No, not a single innovation CRM. Sheryl, LLMs have been around since 2017. Vendors have been using this since 2018. 7 years later, we're touting what they did for the last 7 years as new and unique and original on a 30-year-old technology. This is not an innovation. A true innovation is AI. This is not AI.
I think you're totally missing my
money and nothing.
I think you're totally missing my point. That's okay.
All right.
I don't know what your point. If you weren't talking about the evolution of CRM, I don't know what your point was. That's what your point was.
What I'm trying to say is
time out, guys.
Time out, guys. Movement in UI interfaces.
Time out, please.
Let's hear from our host. Now a word from our host.
I just want Sheryl.
Hey, Brent, how's it going?
Hey, no, it's actually good. I just want Sheryl to get that last thought out, so that there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect. I would love to get Sheryl to kind of take your stage.
I'm trying to articulate it, and I agree with Esteban. I'm not really articulating it perfectly. Here's the thing, right? So because we've all been in the industry for 3 decades, right? We've all, and businesses are still trying to solve the basic problems that we were trying to solve 3 decades ago, right? The only thing that has changed over time is solving that same problem. So I'm going to stop there. Now I'm going to add into what I'm trying to say. No matter what, there is a way, and I'm trying to not come out like it's a lipstick on a pig problem. I do see a way to use a lot of these machine learning algorithms that we've been improving over the last 3 decades, right? With the capabilities of a large language model, including the improvements with workflow and work processing. Hold that thought. 2 or 3 decades ago, we talked a lot about task-based interfaces to make the complexities of the systems we were using today easier. It failed abominably because we could not think through all the structured workflows and we just couldn't keep up. We needed something that was a lot more flexible. We needed something that was more of a RAG interface to be able to ask questions, to interface with it, to interact with it. I found something I wrote almost a decade and a half ago about the rise of invisible interfaces. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, except for back then it was all about how we had this vision of a voice interface over the complexities, right? So Esteban's not wrong. We've been talking about this for so friggin' long. What I'm trying to say is there's real improvements we can start giving everyday employees today to improve the interface of just the stuff we're doing today. I'm not trying to solve world hunger. If I can solve a salesperson's pain points, entering their stupid opportunities or understanding the next best person to call and doing it maybe in a new way that actually maybe works today, I'm happy with that.
So I want to take on a huge challenge and try to forge a middle ground between Esteban and Sheryl that doesn't fall apart the second I construct it.
Hey, John.
I know you're reading my mind, John.
Yeah, Brent.
John, I'm going to give you the spotlight.
Okay.
Oh, you're giving me the light? Oh, okay. All right. So, okay, the pressure's on. Okay, so one thing I really noticed this spring around the impact of generative technologies is it customers find the conversation exciting and engaging, and as a result, it's motivating them to take a much harder look at data and AI initiatives that they should have really looked at a long time ago. And these are really, really constructive conversations. Now, unfortunately, I think what they find again and again is that without a better data infrastructure and data layer, they can't accomplish as much as they wanted to, though sometimes they can get some of this through their vendor of choice if they've already kind of done that within the context of that vendor. But in general, this is motivating customers to take a harder look at things, even if to some extent some of the pros and cons of these technologies are not well understood. And like I said, not always that powerful. It's very misunderstood, for example, that these systems are not as accurate as they should be at times. But one thing they're really good at, and generative AI is not just good at language, it's really good at multiple formats. So when you think about, for example, like the difficulty of creating a campaign from scratch, well, LLMs are really good at spitting out a 1-year marketing campaign for you that would have taken hours, but you go in and you fine tune it. The problem that we're running into is vendors are over promising and saying, this will create the campaign and just run it for you. And they're getting into this autonomous enterprise bullshit. I've been waiting to say that the whole episode, so now we get to do it. And I picked out a few key quotes from customers for you guys for this spring, and I'm going to give you one of them now, which was, and they said this directly to a vendor, and I'm not going to name the vendor, but it could have been any of our top vendors. He said, I'm going to tell you guys, talk less about autonomous agents and talk more about agents that help people to do their jobs.
That's
and I think that completely captures the current customer mentality, which is, if you can help me do my job better, I will listen. But you better show me, and you better not get too far ahead of where I currently am.
Yeah, and I agree. One of the things I forgot to say one more time, Esteban, that John pointed out that I want to make sure that people hear is, and I've been saying this for years too, we've argued about this, but is the value of the data. I do love the fact that John pointed out that it is resurrecting, prioritizing, important, whatever you want to put in it, because I've always been about the data, but everyone's been, yeah. Well, now maybe it's moving the needle to finally make enterprise.
It's created an urgency around that conversation. I gotta
applaud Esteban, because I can see the struggle is real to hold
Yeah.
back COVID.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I would love to give.
All right, here we go. Esteban's ready to unload.
We're having different conversations. I'm not going to get into a conversation when I have nothing to add. I don't relish my name being mentioned in places where I don't belong. I mean, to me, this whole evolution of CRM, CX, and enterprise technology doing job better. Yes, I'm with John. I use AI to make my job easier. I save money, time, and processes and everything, but that's not AI, dude. That's just automating a few tasks is not AI.
I totally
AI has an
disagree
impact.
with you.
None of this shit has an
And on
impact.
top of it, if we can't
None of this
use
shit has an
it
impact.
effectively, what is that going to do? Everyone's talking about a productivity gap and how we have such low productivity output. In Canada, they're really talking about how bad our productivity is. If we can improve that, that is a huge input into
So this is what you do. This is what you do as an analyst. You go and you get the data from the government that tracks productivity. You show them the data and tell them to shut the fuck up.
So in 10 or 20...
Because the productivity has been increasing steady over the last 20 years, and it's been increasing at the same pace over the last 20 years, and it's not going to accelerate or diminish because of AI, and productivity is absolutely unrelated to the current state of the enterprise technology. So then if you're going to make an argument about something that doesn't matter, show them the data and tell them to shut up.
Yeah.
So the productivity stats aren't there yet. And there's been study after study showing that the multi-agent protocols aren't working yet. Completing end-to-end processes, there's too much potential for compound error risk, and there's a bunch of studies out this spring on that. The one thing I do want to say is that intelligent systems are what fascinate me, and someday we're going to have truly intelligent systems. It might be 10 years, it might be 20, it might be 30, I'm not sure, probably in that time frame. I'm scared of that time frame because I think it's going to be a real seismic wave through the white collar work experience and maybe blue collar as well. But right now we don't have that, and I don't have a problem with not calling it AI if Esteban doesn't want to. Call it whatever you want. But the really important distinction to make, though, is that whatever's going on with OpenAI and Anthropic and those companies, what enterprises are doing to get results from this and what vendors are doing is very different. It's a much more constrained architecture that includes the incorporation of customer-specific data through things like RAG and agent tool calling and things like that. The downside to this architecture is it's rather complex to maintain and manage. And it involves, when do we use this model? When do we downsize this model? When do we use a reasoning engine? When do we don't? How do we iterate on this internally? And the problem with that is that customers can run into a lot of trouble if they try to do this on their own. And there's a bunch of stats predicting failures in these projects, and we've seen accumulated failures in these projects. And so that's one of the problems with the architecture we've arrived at. If you go on YouTube right now and look up like a RAG implementation, the chart of all the components is going to give you a brain freeze. And so that's what the vendors are successfully doing, and that's what very sophisticated customers are successfully doing. But I believe the average customer is somewhat locked out of this unless they work with a vendor directly.
So let me jump in here. Real quick, because I want to ask. There's different, because like Zoho just came out today, introduced their LLM. They run their own data centers. They build their own servers. They host everything internally. Is that the right approach from an enterprise perspective, or
1000%?
Okay, I was going to say the other. But
Switzerland actually created
Time
an LLM.
out, Brent. That's Zoho hosting their LLM, not an enterprise hosting their LLM. Let's clarify.
Zoho is the host, is the application provider, is the LLM. They're doing it all themselves for their customers.
Everybody who's interested in the quality of the data and the content provided and produced by the LLM should host their own. It is not really that hard, and it's actually much more economically efficient than buying tokens from the open market. Switzerland created an LLM model for the entire country that answers all the questions in the country. I have about a dozen cases from companies and organizations and institutions that have recently created their own language models for the same reason. Even relying on an open model for anything that you do is absolutely stupid and demeaning to the quality that you want to achieve. You want to achieve good quality and good results, create your own LLM. The initial cost may be a little more than you think it is, but the maintenance is actually just the same as it cost you before to maintain a knowledge base, if not better.
Well, there are some nuances here because you can build your own LLM with open source technology.
Yeah.
Zoho actually built their own LLM from scratch. I don't recommend that for most folks. That
Thank you,
requires
John.
significant
A
development
reality
resources. But the thing that's really important about what Zoho has done here is that they know exactly what they train their model on, which you can't say using external models, even if they're open source, because very few even of the open source models disclose what they've been trained on. That's really, really powerful to be able to say that to your customers. Now, having said that, Zoho is going to continue to offer access to external models, and that is sensible as well, because even though I have been pretty critical of those models, they do spend an absolute ridiculous amount of money on development of those models, and they don't want to force customers onto their proprietary technology before it's ready. So it's a very sensible move, Brent. And in general, enterprise vendors have an obligation to be much more transparent on their enterprise AI architecture, where the data is going from. And there's a lot of minute details like what happens to your log files that are actually tremendously important, because you can walk around and say, well, they don't train on our data, but they're still, by default, they're still taking all your log files. That's what they do. And so they're not training on it, but they still have it.
So take it one step further. So have Soho create a core enterprise LLM, offer it to the customers for a modicum for maintenance purposes, and then once you offer it to you, it's instantiate it to be your own LLM. You can use it for whatever you need at enterprise level with your data, not nobody else's data. Doesn't use anybody else's.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what the model is moving. Everyone is taking that subset of it. We're not just using.
No, but there's a difference between being a public model and one that is offered to you for a price that actually, like, when you buy it, it's your own personal model that is just brought into your organization, and it only grows or it extends the way that you want to do it.
Well, and just real quick too, one of the things I really like about Zoho's approach, and they're not the only vendor doing some of these things, but Zoho's doing a lot of work on figuring out exactly what size model is appropriate for what size task. And the beauty of that is you become much more operationally efficient, and you're not consuming excess energy using LLMs for things you don't need to use them for. And I think that's really smart. And it also really shows you exactly what capabilities smaller models can have. And I think smaller models can be very effective in a lot of cases. The downside to the smaller model is it sometimes it lacks some of the language understanding, because the large models have been trained on a whole lot more language. And so, for example, a small, you can for users, yes. For customer facing stuff, not as much, because customers are going to sometimes interact with smaller models and say, "What the hell? It's just a dumb chatbot."
No, I meant
so you have to,
employees.
internally, yes, because employees can get used to like what they have to say to the model to get what they want out of it.
I want to shout out a friend of mine, Amber Donald, who's been commenting up a storm.
Yeah, hi, Amber.
Amber, what did you mean by thank you for saying that?
Oh, she's referring to me as always.
Yeah, it's whatever Esteban said last, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really? I thought it was what John said.
No, it was what Esteban
it's
said.
usually John is the modern one, so it's always whatever John says.
Okay.
So the modesty is getting a little too.
Yes.
So Brent, since we have like 10 minutes to go, let's change the initial question from should the government regulate AI to should the government regulate techno-capitalism to the derision of Sheryl hating the term. But that's a much better question, because AI is nothing but AI is nothing but the current incantation of techno-capitalism, like it was before for digital, social, whatever. So should we actually regulate how much money could be made and what could be derived, blah, 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 from techno-capitalism?
But I think, though, with this latest incarnation of whatever technical capital, whatever the words are, I think this incarnation raises the stakes more than in previous incarnations. I mean, AI affects everybody. I mean, some of these other technologies that we thought were going to change the game and maybe change the definition of techno-capitalism, I don't think they're going to have as big as impact as this stuff is, to the point where did Obama even say the term AI, or did any of these presidents even think about this?
Yeah, Obama did in his first administration. He did.
What about 20 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years? Of course not. But now it's front and center, and so because it's front and center, because of regular folks are starting to get their hands on this stuff and use it, and I think that's pushing the ball forward. And we see what it can do, and we can see the positives and the negatives. I don't want to leave it up to just the politicians who are thinking every 4 years or every 2 years. We need people that are thinking much further down the line.
I would like the politicians to regulate the framework in which this stuff operates, and I would like the politicians to stay out of complex topics that they know nothing about.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You know for a fact that whatever he's going to say, Trump, is a distraction from what's going on, and he's trying.
I don't care about Trump. I don't even care about him. I care about what he tells the government to do. That's my concern.
Well, I guess that gets right to the point.
But Ray Wan in his many presentations talks about the difference between American politics and Chinese politics, where to the point that like 70%, 60%, 50%, I can't remember the number of people involved in Chinese government have PhDs or advanced masters in technology and things like that. And here the best we can hope is for somebody who knows how to spell government. Right, that's a difference in why I want the politicians to regulate.
Yeah, but it's the folks
to regulate the framework. I want them to create a fair framework in which we can all partake and participate, and nobody can get off on the side doing something stupid. But I don't want them to regulate technology and things that they have no idea or understanding of.
Do you know what a fair framework is? Does anybody know what a fair framework is? Because what's fair to one people is not fair to others.
Ralph Korb said that the EU actually just published a free framework. It's one of the comments that he put about 5 minutes ago. He said the EU's AI framework is a fair framework where everybody can do whatever they want, but they don't get to
So
do
one thing I like about the EU AI Act is that the big AI companies really hate it, which shows me that it's probably pretty good. Whenever those guys get upset that their freedom of movement is being constrained in some way, then I know that someone's on the right track. But I will say we don't know for sure. It may end up being a little bit too heavy-handed a regulation, because the one thing I think you have to judge a region by their regulation versus the degree of entrepreneurship and creativity and new companies that come out of that region. So, you have to have both, right? If you have really strong regulations and you also have a lot of creativity coming out of that region, then I really like what you're doing. If you have strong regulation, but your economies aren't that great and you're not creating a whole bunch of new companies and cool ideas, then maybe the regulation's a little stifling. But one really cool thing about the EU AI Act, which I think we could all learn from, is it attempted to classify different kinds of AI-related activities in different risk levels. And I think that's really, really enormously helpful for practitioners. For example, a lot of HR practitioners out there who claim to be embracing AI in their companies haven't even really given that a lot of thought. And so they brazenly move from rewriting job descriptions to messing around with performance reviews. And the legal and ethical risks of those activities are completely different. And the EU AI Act provides a framework for understanding that.
I agree as much as I can with what he just said. And it goes against my nature, so that what he said is really smart.
Yeah, and I agree too.
That's amazing. You guys are all agreeing. When I'm
wow, first time of the whole episode. That's cool.
I mean,
I can't have that. I can't have that.
We screwed that up, Brent.
I can't have that.
Let's use a George Constanza primer here. Quit while you're ahead. We're done. Thank you very much, everybody.
I'll just say this. Things are moving so fast in the technology side. Any kind of legislation is going to be legislating for today, and by the end of the day, it'll be outdated. And that's the problem we have with this stuff, when we have people who think they know that don't, people who know enough to know that they don't know at all, and people who want it just for the monetization, just because it might provide them more power, more influence, more money. I don't know where the happy medium is for something to really get done.
Just a framework we need to develop, which empowers everything. So
but
I don't know.
We're so divided in this country. We're so divided in this country. I don't see how we even.
I have to say one thing. When the EU sees the rational voice in regulation, we're in a really big problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we're coming up at the top of the hour. Last thoughts. We'll start with Esteban.
On this or overall in life?
Overall, whatever. Yeah, we discussed kind of a lot of stuff, but where do we go from here? Where should we go from here? If it were up to Esteban to set the course for the next 2 years, I'm asking.
Oh man. Honestly, I do believe that we have to create a fair framework in which all this stuff is discussed. I think that we don't have the answers, and regulation is never the answer as a first step. I think that we need to have consistent and expert-driven discussions that, except for researchers from OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, and Google, which are not, consistent and expert-driven. But we need to have expert-driven, discussions that involve sociologists, anthropologists, and people that we normally would not talk to, because that's what we're talking about. We don't talk about technology. Technology is easy. I've been doing this shit for 40 years. It keeps getting easier every year. It's not about technology. This is about, the framework in which it gets utilized and what it does. And do we need to regulate it? I don't know, but we need to have the discussion whether or not to be regulated. We don't need a speech telling us that we're going to regulate something that nobody understands.
John.
I would just want enterprises to realize that they can get some success out of these current technologies, but it's going to require a lot of discipline and sophisticated understanding of how these architectures are applied. For individuals, I would just say be very wary of the media environment around this. Be very wary of the people on LinkedIn saying, "I just built this whole thing with AI today. It's so awesome," and really make it an adventure for yourself, not to be overwhelmed, but to learn about this in all the different ways that you can. And the thing that I feel really strongly about right now is that don't surrender your development of your critical thinking, your creativity, and your industry expertise. And these big AI companies have really declared war on all three. Now, there's a little more awareness on the critical thinking stuff because there's been studies on it. These systems are content generators, not creators. They're not a substitute for human ingenuity, creating your own life, following your own passions, submitting your own ideas to your supervisors and saying, this is how we can change our company. AI doesn't do that. And also, AI is not expert. In fact, experts are the ones are the only ones left that can sometimes understand what's flawed in the output. So don't give up on your pursuit of mastery, because you're not going to be erased, despite the fact that the propaganda is that, oh, these systems can pass the bar exam and pass these PhDs, so there's no more experts needed. That's total crap. So become that expert that you want to be, change the world, and we'll be okay. Maybe. Save the world, please.
Damn it,
I can't do it.
How do I go after that?
I'm ready to go out and charge and go out and kick somebody's ass. No.
Let's go.
All right.
I'll hold them down for you, Brent. I'll hold them down for you.
All right, Sheryl, you got to follow that one.
I was just going to bring it back to reality. I mean, I'm not a political thing with like Esteban. I'm more aligned with what John says, which is around just test it, understand it, get smart, use it, don't be afraid of it. But honestly, it's exactly what I was going to say. Understand today what the use cases are. Go out and try to use the technology, play with it, understand it, clean up your corporate data, give it into the hands of your employees, train your own small models. You don't necessarily have to worry about the large public models. Use some of the large language models out there. Go meet with all the startups. Yeah, don't believe it, but learn from them, see what they're trying to do, and then play with it. Just have some fun. If we can start improving our productivity, what's so bad about that?
What is so bad about that?
There you go. You cover the advice covered the entire spectrum of everything.
Oh, and one more thing. Try to see if you can get Esteban to share his latest research with you, because it's dynamite.
Ooh.
I'll do that.
Ooh, John.
Dude, I'm feeling the warmth on this. You guys just came with such positivity
what
at the
what
end.
I wrote last month was good, but what I'm writing now for the second month is so much better that
All right. Well, I haven't seen the second month yet. I can't endorse the second month yet, but the first month was good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're gonna make me blush.
Really? I've never seen that before, but okay, I'm trying to see if it's.
Well, nobody ever said something that they meant to me before.
And that's what I'm used to. All right.
Hey, thanks for the chatters. You guys were great.
Everybody was great.
Try it and train it, right, Amber? Go for it.
Yeah, Amber's great. She's one of our best buds on a couple of shows I do. Thanks. You guys not only brought the heat, but you even brought some hope at the end. We need the hope.
That's all, John. And unfortunately, I got a cold. I gotta run to. But thanks very much for having me here, and I'll do it anytime. And John, Sheryl, thank you for the patience. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys.
Feel
soon.
better, man.
All righty. Thanks again, man. And thanks to John and Sheryl. Sheryl, try to stay cool wherever you are. And Bro Hammer, you got any shows coming up?
There will be more. I'm not sure what the next one is, but just watch my LinkedIn feed. I'll let you know.
Well, watch that LinkedIn feed. How could I not? Because I get notifications all the time.
I think I got an enterprise month in review coming in about a week and a half. So,
all right, we'll look out for that. Everybody, thanks, and I'll see you next week.
Bye. Bye.